For more on this, Edward Howell joins us from Oxford, UK. He's a lecturer in politics at the University of Oxford. Edward, this might have been a unanimous verdict on Yoon Suk Yeol, but as we can see from the entirely opposing reactions in the public and from polling, the country remains politically polarised. So how do you think this upcoming election is going to go?
Thank you very much. And yes, the political polarization in South Korea is certainly not going to go away, even despite Yoon's ouster earlier today. In fact, it's likely to become even more entrenched. The election is crucial, particularly given how Yoon's removal from power takes place at a very precarious time. We have the United States imposing tariffs on South Korea. We have an extremely ever more aggressive North Korea collaborating with Russia, increasing its nuclear weapons, and an increasingly aggressive China. So these all combine to produce a very precarious security environment for South Korea at a time when, at least over the next 60 days, it has no real leader.
Yes, and also I understand the country is facing severe economic challenges at the moment, and those compounded by Trump's new tariffs. And so this new leader that's elected will have a lot on their plate with the external pressures, but also the deep polarisation within the country.
Certainly, and it's likely that any election campaign from either side, from the ruling party or the left-leaning opposition, will feature the US-ROK relationship, not just its security relationship, but its economic relationship. And the acting president, Han Duck-soo, only announced yesterday, after Trump's imposition of tariffs, that South Korea wanted to try and negotiate with the US in order to reduce the impact on South Korean businesses. So there's a lot of broader economic and geopolitical tensions going on here, in addition to the domestic tumult that we're seeing in South Korea today. Yoon's removal is only really just the beginning.
And in regards to that domestic tumult that you mentioned, there have been calls for constitutional reform because of concerns that the president holds too much power. But surely that's going to be difficult to do, given any future president may not be too keen to weaken their powers. And so do you think that is likely, constitutional reform?
This has always been floating around, particularly after the declaration of martial law on the 3rd of December. It is a much longer term process than people think. And in the short term, South Korea needs to regroup and get through the interregnum the next 60 days, a maximum of 60 days. I do think that that democracy in South Korea at the moment is very resilient. Throughout the process from the 3rd of December, when martial law was invoked, and then due process was followed. It was subsequently revoked. And throughout the very lengthy period of time during which the Constitutional Court has deliberated on this matter, democracy is resilient. It's alive and well in South Korea, at the same time, despite the political polarization.
And despite being a fairly young democracy as well. And so where do you think things are going for South Korea? Do you think stability is on the horizon? I think this snap election needs to happen by the start of June.
Yes, so the election needs to happen before or on the 3rd of June. So it's 60 days. It depends on the outcome. We know that the policies of the left-leaning opposition, the Democratic Party, particularly in the foreign policy domain, are very different to those of the ruling and People Power Party, particularly in relationship to moving away from the United States towards China, moving away from Japan, and engaging in much more reconciliatory approaches towards North Korea. We know all of this depends on a myriad of factors, whether North Korea will want to engage with the South. It's shown no indication thus far. And obviously the changing dynamics between the US and China and the broader US foreign policy. But there will likely be a foreign policy shift if Lee Jae-myung and the Democratic Party takes power. And this will be felt and noticed. And it may not be to South Korea's advantage, actually.
Edward Howell, lecturer in politics at the University of Oxford, thank you so much for your time.